And hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Future Direction in Lab Medicine webinar on quality in the AI era. I'm Dr. Linda Hisatsri, an assistant professor in laboratory medicine and pathology in the Division of Laboratory Genetics and Genomics at Mayo Clinic, and I'll be serving as your host today. Our presenters today are Darshi Basi and Luke Ramlow, who are both quality improvement advisors from Mayo Clinic's Office of Education. Darshi is an assistant professor of healthcare administration and medical education, and Luke is an instructor in healthcare system engineering. And with that, I'll turn things over to our presenters. Darshi, Luke, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hisatsri. This was wonderful. And hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to speak with you. Now, you already work in one of the most quality critical environments that exists. In the lab, every result, every process, every handoff has a downstream impact on a patient. You perhaps understand better than anyone that precision and reliability aren't just goals, they are the standard. And that's why AI matters here, because technology doesn't create quality, it scales whatever already exists. Strong processes, they accelerate value, and weak processes accelerate risk. So today's conversation is about quality as the stabilizing force in the AI era. And before we talk about AI, we need to ground ourselves in what we mean by quality and how it has evolved alongside industry. And let us start by capturing how you think about quality. And a question: when you hear the word quality, what comes to mind? I'm seeing performed, first, rework, accuracy, practices, standard, integrity, performance, right item. And all of what you've shared, that maps almost perfectly to what the quality gurus have been telling us for decades. And there is no single right answer. Quality integrates multiple perspectives: customer expectations, reliability, efficiency, consistency. Thank you so much for those wonderful responses. So quality isn't one thing. It is the integration of customer expectations, fitness for use, conformance to requirements, and value with efficiency. Now, these definitions still apply in the AI era, but AI forces us to be explicit about them. So when we think about customer expectations, in the lab, your customer is the clinician waiting on results and ultimately the patient. Quality means their confidence in every result you deliver and something that they will never question. When you talk about fitness for use, it's whether your assay, your instrument, your process actually performs reliably under your specific conditions, not just in theory, but in your lab, every time, every shift. Conformance to requirements, you're probably most familiar in this area. You probably have ISO standards or some other standards, and consistently meeting those standards, not occasionally, but every single time. Value and efficiency. Think turnaround time, repeat testing, rework. Quality is about delivering accurate results with minimal waste and unnecessary variation. So much of how we think about quality today, it was shaped by a small group of thinkers who were grappling with complex systems long before AI entered the picture. The names that you see on the slide are quality gurus. Edwards Deming, he reminded us that organizations are systems. In the lab, when something goes wrong, the instinct is often to focus on the individual. Deming would say, look at the system instead, because the system produces the outcome. Joseph Juran focused on fitness for use. In your world, a result that is analytically correct, but delivered too late is not a quality result. It has to meet the need of the clinician and the patient at the right time. Philip Crosby emphasized prevention over inspection, designing quality into your processes, your standard operating procedures, your instrument maintenance, your training. It's always more effective than catching errors at the end. Ishikawa developed the cause and effect diagram to identify root causes. You may know it as fishbone diagram, and there's a good chance many of you have actually used it without knowing it came from him. That's how embedded his thinking already is in lab quality. And Taguchi, he taught us that variation always creates loss. Even when outcomes appear acceptable, think reagent lots, instrument calibration, operator technique, every source of variation is a quality risk. Now, what's striking is how relevant these ideas remain. They weren't reacting to technology, they were preparing us for complexity. And that complexity is exactly what AI brings. Okay, now this slide, it highlights something very fundamental. Quality has always evolved alongside the way industry works. So every major shift in how we produce, scale, and deliver value has required a corresponding shift in how we think about quality. We begin with quality 1.0. So in the earliest industrial era, quality was about inspection. You made the product, then you checked it. The focus was volume, and quality was largely reactive. And then as industry moved into mass production, we entered quality 2.0. Standards and basic statistical controls, they emerged. Organizations started measuring defects, scrap, rework. Quality improved, but it was still largely compliance driven. The real turning point came with quality 3.0. As computing entered the workplace, quality became a business discipline. Customer satisfaction, continuous improvement, leadership accountability, all of that took center stage. And quality moved from the shop floor into the boardroom. Today, we are in quality 4.0, aligned with industry 4.0. The era is defined by digitization, data, automation, and AI. And quality is about designing intelligent systems. Machines increasingly monitor and adjust themselves, while humans focus on judgment, integration, and strategy. And as we look ahead to quality 5.0, the message becomes even clearer. Technology must serve people, not the other way around. So the takeaway is simple. Quality has never competed with technology. It has always guided it. And in this AI era, quality's role isn't to slow innovation down, it's to ensure innovation scales safely, ethically, and sustainably. Over to you, Luke.
Thank you, Darshi. So with that foundational look that Darshi gave us at quality and how it's evolved over the years, we're going to kind of turn our attention now to quality in the context of AI and automation. So quality, as we've traditionally understood it, has evolved slowly for many years. We saw that in quality 1.0 through 1.5. So as organizations increasingly adopt artificial intelligence and automation, we have to evolve how we discuss and apply quality principles. And again, that's that quality 5.0 that Darshi was just referring to. So I'm going to focus on why quality is essential in digital workflows and how it supports trustworthy and efficient AI and automation adoption. So in a digital environment where automation executes tasks performed in conjunction with people or that were once performed by people, our ability to maintain consistent and reliable processes becomes even more important than it's ever been. So we need confidence that the data is accurate, that the outputs are trustworthy, and that our workflows are designed to support that safe and efficient use of AI and automation. So adopting AI and automation requires very high quality standards. Darshi and I, our boss, he didn't come up with this saying, but it's just something he says all the time, is that there's nothing more wasteful than automating an efficient process. If we automate a workflow that is flawed, that produces waste or doesn't produce consistent outcomes, we're just simply producing waste faster and at a greater scale. So in these processes that we're talking about, data is functioning as the raw material for AI and for automation. So high quality data is what enables AI and automation to generate those dependable outputs that we're looking for. And that in turn supports sound decision makings that people who are using these tools have to make. So without high quality data, the risk of misleading or incomplete results is going to increase, and it's ultimately going to lower trust and reduce efficiency within our processes. So in other words, it's going to work against us. So it's worth emphasizing that speed in this particular context, why it matters and why it matters in the context of AI and automation. We don't just want to go faster for the sake of going faster. We want to go faster. We want to pursue that because every process that produces an outcome, and that outcome for us ultimately reaches the patient, as Darshi alluded to at the beginning. So when we think about this more broadly, right, that customer, if we want to call it a customer, right, it can be the patient. In the Education Shield, where Darshi and I do most of our work, it might be the learner that we're looking at as the customer. We have a lot of processes where the output is a colleague of ours within Mayo Clinic. So if we're able to produce faster and higher quality outputs, it's going to improve service and it's going to strengthen the value that we deliver to whomever that end customer is. So the customer is the focus, and that's a core principle of quality improvement. And so I point that out because speed is sometimes looked at simply as just a byproduct or something that we feel pressure to do, and we don't always know why. But if we shift our focus to that customer focus, to that output-driven customer focus, speed becomes more important. It becomes more clear why we would want to do things faster if we can also do it at a higher level of quality. So to get there, though, we have to ensure that our processes are robust and that our processes are standardized. By the way, side note, that every time we do like a word cloud like that, like standard pops up. And so that's a great link to this part of the conversation. Also, the fact that you are all in the labs and accuracy was actually the most answered one. It was the biggest one in that word cloud, is very on brand for the lab. So bravo to all of you for picking up on that. Great answer. And also not surprising to see all of you in the labs answering that way. So right? That through standardized processes, we can't have non-standard or poor processes to get good, robust, consistent outputs. So poorly designed or inconsistent processes are going to undermine AI or automation, and that's going to potentially reduce the quality of our outputs and create downstream issues for our customers, like our patients or our learners. So when we think about that, process mapping is critically essential. In documenting our current state as part of that is critically essential to understanding how AI and how automation might be useful, or if we don't have robust, consistent, standardized processes, how they can be damaging. So when we document our current state process, when we use process mapping, we can identify variation, we can identify inefficiencies, and we can identify unclear or inconsistent steps. And so those are the areas where not only traditional processes would break down, but certainly when we have AI or automation acting on our behalf, the AI and the automation, again, it's meant to augment our work. So it will not be able to make decisions around quality. It will use those data that you get or those processes that you're working in. And if they're not good or robust processes, or there's quality issues with the data, that's what it's going to process. So that's what we talk about when we say, if we apply AI or automation to a process that isn't robust, we're just going to be producing waste at a faster rate. So as Darcy talks about with all of the historical quality figures, right? One of the things that she mentioned, and one of the things that all of those folks and all of those tools that we talked about was really driving home was reducing variation. So poor processes are going to undermine AI and automation, and variation is what leads to unreliable performance. So maybe that's unclear roles. Whether the roles belong to people or systems or software, right? So roles can be many different things. But if those are unclear, that's going to create confusion. And that's what's going to make automating something or applying AI to a data set or to a process more difficult. Missing documentation, something like that is especially problematic because AI can't be trained effectively when the inputs are unknown or they're inconsistent. And hidden workarounds that people might be doing are also another big problematic point when trying to apply AI and automation. And those things emerge during the process mapping. You can start to see those things. You start to surface those things and make them more transparent that there's a problem there that you're going to have to be addressing. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to automate it. And if you try, you're going to see poor outputs, poor results, and you're going to have to go back anyway and do some process improvement because the outputs, the significant impact on the outputs and the outcomes of the automation and the AI are not going to be usable. Question to think about. When technology made a process more complicated, what was the main reason? Was it too many steps were added as a result? Was it something like the process wasn't clear to begin with? Was it a data issue? The data was missing or incorrect? Was it something like the technology didn't match the workflow well? Was it something like people weren't trained or prepared to use the technology, and thus it created bigger problems and more inefficiencies than actually creating inefficiencies? Or was it something else altogether? We've all come across it. The one that I'm most familiar with is additional steps being added as a result. So people had a predetermined process before. We've added technology, but say something like making sure that there was good data integrity so that the AI or the automation could process it. Well, people had to then, as Darcy alluded to before, kind of that quality 1.0. People were inspecting the data. People were looking at it. That might have been an extra step. And then the process not being clear to begin with was another really big one that I've experienced multiple times when trying to apply AI and automation. All right, so we're going to move into considering our quality foundations so that we can focus on, improve, understand the foundations of quality that we can then build our AI and our automations on top of. So quality in AI and automation adoption depends a lot on those foundational principles, such as standardization, those defined roles and responsibilities that we talked about before, the proper documentation, and then consistent monitoring and continuous improvement. So standardizing how work is done is going to ensure that there are reliable outcomes. Clarifying roles is going to ensure both people and systems understand those responsibilities. Documentation preserves that knowledge and it provides the structure needed for automation. It also provides the structure and the information needed to train artificial intelligence. Continuous improvement it does remain, it will continue to remain essential even after automation is introduced because outputs are going to evolve, right? So an output might still be acceptable based on the initial design or the initial development of an AI tool or an automation, but that output could change over time. The needs of our customers, the needs of our patients, those things could change over time. So we're always going to have to, even in an AI and automated world, we're still going to have to do continuous improvement to make sure our outputs from these processes that use AI and automation are consistent with what the end user or the customer needs. So looking specifically at processes, right? So processes are a group of interconnected steps, right? So we kind of know that intuitively. So those interconnected steps have defined inputs and outputs. So once we establish how a process should operate, we can identify opportunities where integrating automation or AI can be done effectively and consistently. Again, this is a really important thing. As Darshi and I have worked with more and more groups and more people to apply artificial intelligence or automation, many times we're applying those tools to a specific step or a specific portion of an overall process. It's not necessarily automating an entire process from beginning to end. And so we do that when we identify those opportunities where automation or AI can be used effectively, and we focus on that. So the areas that we want to focus, though, when we talk about quality and is it a stable, robust process, are places where there are handoffs. So between steps in our process, especially between different teams, maybe between different people, or between an automated system and a person. Those are those high risk points that we would look at because that's where defects typically surface or defects typically happen. So when the roles and responsibilities and the expected outputs are clearly documented and clearly defined and available, we can then measure quality at each handoff to ensure that we have data accuracy and that we have high quality inputs and outputs moving throughout our process. Again, it goes back to that kind of garbage in, garbage out, automating a bad process, right? If we automate a bad process, it's going to just create waste at a higher rate. So again, those handoffs and that documentation are going to ensure that we're not doing that. So when we talk about mapping, we talk about continuous improvement. So mapping variation and waste, right? Doing the mapping and identifying where that variation and that waste is happening. That reveals real improvement opportunities, right? So it starts there, right? We don't want to be layering automation and AI on a bad process. So by mapping it, it's going to create that transparency. It's going to create that ability to go in and improve your process before you apply these tools. So methods that we talk about here, such as PDSA, so plan, do, study, act, right? So quick cycles, quick experiments, very powerful because you're not making improvements or saying you think that a particular improvement will work. You're actually testing it. And based on what you learn, you're then applying what you know through that test to the process to make it better. Very powerful to do small tests of change using PDSA. Root cause analysis. So there are tools like 5 Whys or FMEA, which is, if you haven't heard that acronym, it's failure mode and effect analysis. So those type of root cause analysis tools help us ensure that we're addressing underlying issues instead of symptoms of a problem within a process. And then again, in your word cloud, you saw that standardization, right? So that's a big one. So standards and standard work ensure that we've defined the best known method for achieving a particular output and a consistent output. So ultimately, the data-driven decision making removes guesswork, and it allows us to act based on evidence that we trust rather than how we feel something might be working or how we feel something might be going. It's evidence-based. So this slide kind of brings all of these concepts together, right? So when we think about bringing this all together, we have to think about it kind of in a structured approach. There's a lot of moving parts when we talk about the processes, the technology, the tools that we would use. So we want to start small. So first, we need to verify that documentation exists, right? Within our processes, if we're thinking that automation or AI might help, we need to look for the documentation of that process. Does it exist? If it does exist, is it clear? And can it be used to guide someone who's not familiar with the process to a correct and consistent output? If you don't have documentation, or if that documentation is unclear and it doesn't provide consistent outputs, that's your starting point. Once we have that, then we can standardize and we can simplify the process, improving transparency as we do so, right? We're revealing and surfacing variation and eliminating it. So once we have standards and we're standardized, we can then validate that our data accurately reflects how a process is performing. That's how we get trustworthy data. That's how we get clear processes. That's how ultimately we boost efficiency. Sometimes we're going to boost efficiency. Actually, most of the time, we're going to, if we're identifying and we're uncovering these issues, process improvement alone, not even using AI or automation, we're going to probably see improvements there. But then, of course, if it is a robust process, when we layer AI and automation on top of it, we're going to make it even more efficient. So only when we're at that point, only when it's a robust process and we understand it, are we ready to layer those tools on top of it. Again, a lot of tools here to think about, right? That's why we want to approach it in a systematic way, right? There's robotic process automation. There's low code or no code tools like Power Automate. There's definitely more advanced technologies that our friends in IT might be better at, like Python coding, maybe machine learning, right? So there's a whole suite of products and tools that are out there that do automation or that enable AI. So we will also need to make sure that we're looking at the tools that are available and are they the best tool for the job. So after we determine the best tool, and after we've standardized and improved our processes, then we want to apply these same continuous improvement or these same quality ideas continuously through the life cycle of that automation and how we're using it, so that we can maintain trust in the system and that it continues to meet our customers' needs. All right. So that's a lot of stuff I just talked about. I have the next slide is a poll everywhere question, which, as we know, with the last one, it didn't work. So I'm going to give you another thing to think about, and you don't have to answer it. But the thing I want everybody to think about going forward from this point is, think of one small way or one thing you can do to improve your daily work, and think about how an AI tool or an automation tool might be able to be layered on top of it, right? And again, think small to start, right? Think about your daily work, something you have control of, something that you know, right? So there's no ambiguity around roles and responsibilities, right? It's something you are responsible for. And then think about how you might be able to use AI or automation to improve it. And that's a good starting point to just start and test, to just even learn about what are the possibilities with these tools and with AI and automation, and how you can think about it through that lens of continuous or quality improvement. I will hand it back over to Darshi, and she is going to walk you through a great use case of how you can use AI within a processor or around a specific topic.
All right. Thank you so much, Luke. So we talked about quality principles. We talked about the evolution of those principles and why they matter today in the AI era. So let me now show you what this actually looks like in practice. Now, this is a real use case designed as a quality-first AI solution. And before I share the details, let me give you a little context. So one of my roles is that of a change management advisor, where, I provide guidance and support to teams that are going through change. It's a work that is high touch, very relationship driven. And within our office, Luke and I are those advisors that help. So it's just a very small group of people doing this work. And with that context, let me share the current state that I had mapped. Now, did an entire process mapping. So when I looked at how that change management support was actually being delivered, and I looked at that through a quality lens, and several issues became clear. And you can see that on the slide. Access to support, it was limited and it depended heavily on availability. The guidance that was provided was inconsistent. It varied by person, timing, workload, and the outcomes were uneven as well. Teams with similar needs could experience very different levels of support. There was no standardized entry point, no consistent triage, and no reliable way to ensure the same quality of guidance every time. And what this flow truly represents is variation, because access was inconsistent and dependent on limited resources, and our outcomes were unpredictable. Now, this is a process problem. And we weren't just losing time, we were losing our ability to scale. And the question then became, how do I design a system that delivers consistent change management support at scale? And to solve this, and I was experimenting with building agents, I developed Novo. That's the name of the agent that I gave it to, right? So just a name. It's not just a chatbot though. Very scalable. It's always on AI partner, designed to provide 24/7 guidance for every role involved in change. Could be senior leaders, could be frontline team members, could be project managers, could be change managers. And here's what I want you to notice. I didn't start with technology. I started with the process. I mapped the current state. I identified the variation, the inconsistency, the dependency on limited resources. I applied the quality foundations that we've been discussing. And only then I built the solution. And what does Novo do? It solves the three core problems that the quality diagnosis revealed. It removes the limits on access, so guidance is available anytime to anyone who needs it. It eliminates inconsistency. Every user receives the same quality of support regardless of, who it is available to. And it also breaks the dependency on limited resources. The expertise is built into the system. It's not locked in a person. So then by launching this agent, Novo, we moved from a scarcity model to one of equity of support and scalable service delivery. And we made expertise available at the speed of the user. Here is the simplified future state. So Novo serves as this first point of engagement, delivering instant standardized guidance for 80% of foundational needs. Complex situations, they get escalated to a human advisor, Luke or I, preserving expertise where it matters most. Now, this is Quality 5.0 in action. Technology serving people, not the other way around. The table that you see here, it represents the shift that I was trying to achieve. Across every dimension, the current state relied on individual availability and judgment, and that created variation and limited access. And as you look at this table, I'd invite you to think about a process in your own work where the current state column feels familiar. I'm sure you can think of a process. And that's exactly where quality first AI begins, not with the technology, but with recognizing the problem. The future state designs consistency, equity, scalability into the system with AI enabling, not replacing expertise. And with that context, let's watch a short demo of Novo in action.
Imagine a change management process that's both consistent and deeply human. Enter Novo, a learning-focused intelligent agent developed by Darshi Basi to institutionalize and support our change management practices.
Novo offers instant access to guidance while ensuring that critical, judgment-based decisions stay in the hands of experienced advisors. It is designed to eliminate the scarcity model we face today By acting as a digital partner, Novo extends our reach and amplifies our organizational agility without increasing our headcount.
Novo's capabilities are grounded in one principle: supportive augmentation. Whether you're seeking answers to targeted change management questions, handling routine advisory tasks, or encountering complex situations, Novo delivers trusted information from always current documentation and remains accessible anytime, anywhere.
When context calls for deeper analysis, Novo seamlessly escalates to a human advisor, reinforcing the partnership at the heart of meaningful change.
Let's explore Novo in action. Let's start with a question a sponsor might realistically ask. As a sponsor for an upcoming change initiative, what are my key responsibilities? Novo responds immediately with clear, structured guidance grounded in established change management principles. It highlights the ABCs of effective sponsorship, being active and visible throughout the change, building a strong sponsor coalition, and communicating consistently with those impacted by the change. This is the type of foundational guidance sponsors often need early, and it's now available on demand, without waiting for advisor availability.
Let's ask another question. I'm interested in conducting an ADKAR survey to assess readiness of an upcoming change. Can you suggest at least 2 questions for each ADKAR element? Here you can see Novo immediately generating a structured ADKAR survey with thoughtful questions aligned to each element: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. What's powerful here is that Novo isn't just explaining the framework, it's translating it into something usable, a ready-to-deploy assessment. Now, the user wants to take this a step further and actually use it, so they ask Novo to email the survey. And just like that, Novo sends the content directly to the user. This is the email they receive, containing the full ADKAR survey, ready to be shared or adapted. What once required back and forth with a change advisor is now available instantly, on demand.
Routine advisory work forms the backbone of effective change management. Drafting communications, building meeting agendas, tailoring messages for diverse audiences, Novo lightens the load, freeing human experts to focus on what matters most: listening, leading, and solving complex challenges.
Some moments demand human sensitivity and contextual wisdom. Novo's service model is designed for these situations. Escalating requests to a professional advisor when personal experience or contextual judgment is essential. This balance between automation and expert intervention drives quality, confidence, and reliability.
Novo isn't about automating roles. It's about transforming business processes. It's human-led, agent-enabled, and outcome-focused. Together, Novo and your advisors advance change management, not through more resources, but through intelligent scale.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much, Darshi and Luke. At this time, as Darshi mentioned, we'll now take questions from the audience. Please remember to submit your questions using the Q&A icon in Zoom. And already I'm seeing one question pop up, and that question is, how did you validate the accuracy of Novo?
So that's an excellent question, and thank you so much for asking. So I used Copilot Studio to build the agent, and within the Copilot Studio application, as you're building, there is an analytics tab where you actually give it answers to expected questions, like an evaluation. You feed it to the agent and you test the agent based on what the agent is responding. So a set of 80 to 100 questions as samples that you give to the agent to figure out, is the agent answering, is it hallucinating or not? So that's how I actually tested it, because the platform gives you that ability to test the agent. I hope I have answered that question.
Yes, thank you so much. Just dovetailing off of that then, is Novo being continuously trained, if you will, or updated?
Yes, and that's another excellent question. This is what I've realized, and I'm going to share my experience. So I was learning how to build agents, and this started off as an experiment. Why don't I try to build an agent that can take my change management role? And little did I realize, the more I was thinking, I was like, I've created a digital worker that I have to manage now. And what does manage mean? I want to continuously monitor this agent and figure out, is it doing the work it is supposed to do? Do I now need to improve it. And also the users of this agent, there's a way you can give feedback. And I have access to that feedback. So what is the feedback that I'm receiving? And this experiment turned into learning that whatever you do today is applicable to the AI world as well. Continuous improvement is a very valid thing that you have to do. And there's also talk about building agents who will do that job. Right? So you see, it's basic principles. It's just that now the work has changed, but the basic foundational principles haven't.
Thank you so much. Further building off of that, the next question is, how will agents like Novo affect future careers in change management?
Another beautiful question, another wonderful question. Already, Luke and I, so our title is Quality Improvement Advisor. Already, both of us, we are so deeply involved in experimenting with AI tools, no-code and low-code tools. We are experiencing exactly what the question you're asking. Our work is changing. If I pick up the job description and look at Quality Improvement Advisor, what is the job description? Things are changing. We are experiencing this transition right away. So yes, the roles are changing, and new titles will emerge. And I will invite Luke. Luke, from your experience, anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, as you alluded to, Darshi, and I think your answer that you've given is spot on. My addition to it is simply, part of that question feels like it could be rooted in what is the outlook, right, for people and their jobs. And what I've learned, what I've seen is the jobs, everybody's job is going to move, it's going to transform, it's going to move towards usage of these tools. And I think it was Jared Stahl, if I'm remembering correctly, but it was at a education technology forum earlier this year where he said, these tools aren't looking to be used to replace people. It's looking to, as Darshi alluded to, augment the work that people are doing. And the people who are able to use these tools effectively to augment their work are going to be the most successful as we move forward. And so that's kind of how I would encourage people to look at it and think about it, because it's a very important question, and it's going to impact all of us. And so, the kind of adopting it early, adopting it often, experimenting with it, trying to understand how it can make your job better, how it can make your job more efficient. Those are going to be the areas to focus. And just to end my thought here, as Darshi alluded to, it's just worth reiterating that, Darshi and I are, we're both engineers by training and degree. And we both found our way into the quality realm, and our job is just, it's just transforming, right? It's completely transforming in those areas that we're focusing. And so I've been enjoying it. I love it. I love the technology. I love the work. So that's kind of how I would encourage people. You don't have to get as into it as Darshi and I did. That's not what I'm saying. But just looking at ways that you can think about adopting it for your work is going to be very impactful and very powerful.
Yep, agree to everything you've said. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you both. Next question is, since Novo is a learning-focused intelligent agent, how does it continuously gather feedback from users to adapt its change management guidance over time? And how do you measure its equity of support across different roles?
I love that all of you are asking these wonderful questions. So it is getting feedback. Now, this agent, let me give you some context. It's not open to the entire organization. It is open to, it's provided to just a few people within the education shield, because this started as an experiment, and we are gradually, as we are learning, because one of the things that we are learning is it uses credits. Do we have the budget? And it's a learning so by doing this, making this agent, we're all learning, right? So the first part of the question, could you please repeat, Dr. Hasadri?
The first part was how does it continuously gather feedback? And then the second portion was how do you measure the equity of support?
Yes. So how does it continuously get feedback? Again, as I had mentioned when I was answering the other question, when the users, the end users, when they interact with the agent, there is a way to provide feedback. You could do a thumbs up, thumbs down, and you could also comment that I didn't like the answer, or it gave me a wrong answer, or I was looking. Now that, so going through the feedback of the end users, now there are two things. Do we trust the end user? Do they really understand change management? There could be two things. So you have to evaluate, right? Some people could be understanding change management differently, and their feedback could be wrong. So taking the time to review the feedback and then making sure that, I update the agent, where we are learning as we are working on agents that hallucination is a thing. So when we get the feedback, there are certain ways that when we, it's like, let's not focus on the generative AI part of the agent where you just let it loose and it just responds. There is a way, as you build agents, you can sort of hard code certain things it's not getting right. So based on the feedback, and I won't go into details, but it's called topics, where you can make the agent follow a certain path if it doesn't get it right by using generative AI. So all of those things, there's a lot of technicality into it, but getting that feedback, editing the agent, and the way you edit it is, again, it's the application life cycle. There's a development environment, there's a testing environment, there's a production environment. People are testing it because the agent is in the production environment, but as you're changing, you change the agent in the sandbox. So you're continuously updating the agent based on that feedback. And that's how the only mechanism of getting feedback is through the agent, that they can do a thumbs, or they can call, hey, Darshi, this didn't work. So that's the first part. And the equity based on the change management role. Now, there are multiple change management roles, right? You have sponsors who sponsor change. You have project managers who lead projects, change projects, but do the technical part of the project. And then you have change managers who do the change management part of any initiative. These are roles. You have managers and supervisors who do the change management role that is expected of managers and supervisors. And you have the employee who's going through the change. And these are 5 distinct change management roles. And guess what? The knowledge area of the agent is populated with distinct information about each of these roles. And the agent, it says, hey, what is your role? It asks, what is your role? And then provides the information based on a standard. In this case, because we follow ProScience change management details, the way it works, the model and the framework, it gives consistent responses no matter what the question, because it is grounded in that information, in that knowledge source. So that basically ensures equity, that everyone, irrespective, you will get the same answer, and because it's grounded in that knowledge source, right? So that ensures it's not giving answers that won't ensure equitable distribution of knowledge. I hope I've answered that question.
Thank you so much. I did want to take a moment then to go into a question that was previously submitted prior to the webinar from one of our audience members. And I believe that you and Luke had touched upon this already, mentioning such tangible benefits as efficiency, augmenting humans in various roles. But along those lines, how can we use AI in underdeveloped parts of the world in order to achieve better outcomes for our patients?
I can start with that one. So it's a really great question, and obviously in an underdeveloped country or in an area where resources are limited, it's a very, very important question. So, you know, uh, as you alluded to, that the people who are going to be using this, it's augmenting their work. So in an area of the world that maybe is underserved, focusing specifically on the usage of tools, even getting into the basic models. When I say basic, I mean the free models, whether it's Copilot, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, right? There are free versions of it out there, and just using that as your entry point, you're going to be able to experiment and see what is available, how it can help, and how it might help with the work that you're specifically doing. And that starting point is crucial, right? And as Darcy alluded to, we're all learning, right? This is a new tool around the world, especially when we start to get into frontline workers, people who are, right there. It's not a computer programmer or a scientist or something like that who's using this advanced tool. This is real people using it in real applications in real life. And so, so there's so much learning to take place. And so that's what I would encourage somebody who's in a situation like that, and how you can think about it and apply it in an underserved area is leverage those free resources, whether it's the tool itself, whether it's training on Coursera, whether it's training on YouTube, right? These are all things that would be potentially available, that you could then focus on and figure out how to apply to your real life process.
Thanks, Luke. What are some barriers then to the adoption of AI and the implementation of it, especially agents like Novo that you both encountered?
And I'm happy to answer that. Oh, sorry, Luke, were you about
No,
to?
please go ahead. Yep.
So the biggest barrier, being someone who is learning about AI, the biggest barrier I would say is not rolling up your sleeves and thinking it's difficult, or not learning and thinking maybe it doesn't apply to my job right now, and waiting for someone else to tell you to learn. And so once you're, past that barrier of, hey, this is not for me, or maybe it won't help me, or maybe it's too complicated, I'm overwhelmed, it's changing too fast, I can't catch up. Just pick up a tool, learn as much as you can, and depending on the situation. I mean, I can speak from experience. That's what I did. I said, I have Copilot Studio license, I'm going to learn. No one told me to build this agent. No one told me what to do. I had the license. I just rolled up my sleeves and started working. And the more I did, the more I sort of became knowledgeable about, oh, this is what it is. It is flawed too. So if I don't understand this, I might build something that might hallucinate or answer the questions not the way that I want it to. So the barrier at this point, I think, is taking a back seat and saying, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, I can't. I think pick up a tool based on the situation, pick up one tool, learn about it, try to implement it in a on a small process. I think you yourself might become a barrier to your learning. And that's from personal experience, where I overcame that and started working on things. So
just offer one quick comment there, because what Darcy said is, similar experience for me as well. Especially AI, it's kind of like a toddler. It does what you tell it, and so what I experienced, very similar to what Darcy explained, is when you start to use it conceptually, these are very flexible tools. They'll do what you tell them, but you have to figure out, one of those barriers is you have to figure out how to configure these things, how do you interact with this tool when you're doing development work? And because these tools use plain language, right? They use large language models to help build them, to help you build them. And so how you use the tool, how you use the development tools, is something you have to learn. It's not intuitive. So really, again, as Darcy alluded to, you can be your own barrier. That learning curve is the biggest, most prominent barrier that was there for me and other people that I've talked to and worked with. And so, as Darcy said, just reiterating here, roll up your sleeves, figure out how to talk to the toddler so that it does what you want it to do. And again, if you do that, if you spend the time, you will see the rewards of that and the output benefits from taking the time to learn.
Thank you so much. I'm not seeing any further questions from the audience, so I will go ahead and just say thank you, everyone, for participating in today's Quality in the AI Era webinar. Thanks again for joining us today, and hope you all have a great day.
Thank you for participating. Please click the button below to complete the evaluation and obtain credit.